let me know when you guys can see it.
Got it.
I'm good.
Perfect. Yeah, so first of all, thanks, Jen, for sending over the samples of the decks that you sent over. So those decks were essentially like, as I understood them, responses to some RFPs that were given. So essentially what I did is that I kind of like went through the deck and like extracted information for what I think that RFP would have been like the original RFP. And then I created like
the original.
That's fine. That's fine. You already did enough to send us that stuff. So what I ended up doing is I created a sample RFP for like a fictitious health client, right? So this RFP is Lakeshore Health System. It has some information on the background, context, things like that, scope of work, things that they're looking for. And the information in here is reflective of things that you guys responded to in the past. And then I used this RFP as essentially the seed synthetic data to generate the presentation. So this is what I'll be feeding in, and this is kind of like what the RFP is going to be based off of. So hopping into the writer platform itself, what I did is I built a playbook called Vizient Kaufman RFP Response Generator. And what this playbook does is that it produces a RFP response deck. And I mean, this is kind of like the caveat I'll give is my interpretation of what you guys were looking for. Feel free to add in your comments to me, but essentially you get the deck, you get like a verification checklist, essentially like all the pieces that are activated in there. And then what the playbook also gives is it gives like a list of items that the end person should kind of like go in and verify, right? So it's like, yeah, check this, check this, check this, check this. And that's kind of like how the playbook works. So to run the playbook,
and
all I did,
Yassine, just quickly worth noting, when you say built, you mean like just chatted with an agent until you kind of got what you needed, sort of thing? Like how technical was it, I suppose?
Oh, you mean like build the playbook itself?
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't very technical. I pretty much like chatted based on the points that you made, Jen, in the last call in terms of like what you guys look for. That's kind of how I went ahead and create this playbook. Kind of I'll give you a peek behind after as to how it was built, more so to kind of showcase how easy it is to modify as well if needed. But the key takeaway here really is I want you guys to understand how, one, the capabilities of Writer in terms of like presentation creation doesn't necessarily need to be through a playbook, and two, how a potential solution could be put together. Let's put it that way. So during the playbook, I just uploaded the RFP document and clicked run, and I'll kind of like walk you through what that looked like. So the first thing it did is that it went ahead and extracted the information that it could. And the way we designed the playbook, right, is like Carla was mentioning before, we wanted the playbook to have like a prompted conversation with the end user, right? So to ask for certain things. So here you could see the playbook is requesting specific types of user input to make the end presentation more customized. So it's asking for some key messaging, if there's any additional information on like a client situation that may be in the head of the end user versus written down somewhere. They have the ability to kind of pop those things in at this stage before the final presentation is generated. So I put in some notes here again based on that synthetic material that I shared. It asks for if there's any, oh, like, do you have specific reference clients that you want to use to be part of the deck? Things like that. And again, like all these things could be obviously like customized to the flow that you guys generally went through, because what Carlo and I heard last time we spoke is that there is some information kind of like floating around that need to kind of be harnessed, and that may not be in like one nice formatted document. So we designed the playbook in a way where that information could kind of be put in ad hoc as the playbook runs before the end result is generated. And then the final set of questions I think I asked for was, yeah, like fees and stuff, right? If there's a sense of, oh, like what should the fee structure look like and things like that. If somebody has a sense, they could put that in here and then have that reflected as part of the end artifact. So once all that information is in, you get a bit of like a pre-built confirmation summary to say, hey, this is everything that's going to be used to generate this playbook. These are this is the engagement team, things like that. You give the thumbs up. Yep, all looks good. Go ahead and put together the deck for us. What's happening in the background is that we've built what we call a skill that just has a bunch of different modules that it was able to, again, extract from the samples that we got. So what we're doing is we're constructing this deck, and in this case, the deck is 54 slides based on the information that was provided by the end user and which modules they want to activate, right? For example, like perhaps not all decks would have case studies needing to be part of them, right? So the solution kind of has that the ability to intelligently know which ones essentially to turn on and turn off based on the conversation that we just had with the end user. And once all that information is in there, it goes ahead and works on generating that deck. So here is the deck, and then here is a list of things that need to be checked. So one great example is in this case, I did not provide a client logo on purpose for this new deck. So it tells me, hey, the client field was empty, so they put in a placeholder, right, from like a sample before. Go in and like update that with the right logo that you want to use for it. It also kind of gives me like a list of different stats, for example, that I want to kind of pay attention to in the deck. But what you're seeing on the right-hand side here is the deck that was created. It's a blend of the understanding of the engagement itself and some of the stock slides in terms of like the specific positioning that Kaufman Hall uses in general, what makes them a good partner, things like that. And then of course, there's like the specific, for example, approach, or like I think there is a slide with the fee structure, all that kind of stuff is kind of like embedded in here, based on the information, of course, that it got. And all this is kind of done within the same kind of like deck branding and style instructions. So I'll pause there for a second. I know I kind of like went through a bunch of things there, but I kind of just wanted to get your initial thoughts and feedback on what I've demonstrated so far.
So I guess help me understand how much of this is like generated by writer, and how much of it is taking the stuff that I gave to you and, for lack of a better term, editing. So what I'm trying to figure out is like two things, actually. So on the left side of the screen, like how much of it had to be programmed, and then what was the back and forth between, or what is the anticipated back and forth between what writer prompts and the user has to input. And then on the export side, is it because I gave you these templates and you had these templates to kind of build in that it's building on, for lack of a better term, or taking the templates and modifying them for the exercise? Because I guess what the end goal to me is this all like, hey, we know what Kaufman Hall's brand is and we're generating it, or writer has skeleton documents that it's applying to?
Yeah, great question. Let me go ahead and show you what is actually powering this, because I feel like a little bit of like understanding on how it was put together will kind of help in answering that question. But the short answer is it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
And it's a little bit of both based on how we understood the solution should be. So what I'm doing right
Sure.
here is just kind of like cracking open the playbook that I built
Yeah.
that produced that, right? So in here, I have a bunch of instructions that, of course, take in that initial RFP document. These first few steps, they kind of like orchestrate that back and forth, right? Where we try to extract additional information from the end user. And then here's a bit of like the powerful piece, right? So what we're doing is we're using this feature called skills, right?
Okay.
Inside of here. And what skills allow you to do and this is like Writer has the skills feature, but this is more of like a general AI education piece here. In general, skills allow you to put very tight guardrails around an LLM for helping to create new things, right? Because if we kind of just describe what we wanted to and gave those instructions to an LLM, the slides themselves will be all over the place, right? In terms of like what it's producing, as well as like every single time it's generating, it'll generate like it won't be as reliable. Let's put it like that.
Sure.
So skills allow you to kind of like fine tune that a little bit. So this is essentially the nuts and bolts of how the generation is being done itself. And let me open that so you can actually see what's happening under the hood. That's doing the actual construction of that presentation. Okay. So this is the back end of that skill itself. And what it's doing is that it's doing like a few different things, and we don't need to like go into in like excruciating detail, but effectively it's understanding which pieces of template material you should be using for this and which pieces need to be specifically generated in terms of like the new content. So similar to like how I answered before, it's a little bit of both, but in my opinion, the powerful piece here is that is like heavily configurable, if that makes sense, right? So like if there is sections or pieces, or even if you want to add in new slides that have not existed before, but you kind of still want them within the same brand, you could use skills like these to say, hey, based on either these template slides or just based on the brand itself, create these new slides for me with, X, Y, and Z content in there. So my understanding is this approach gives you, I guess, a little bit more flexibility in creating net new content without stepping too far outside the bounds of the type of branding that you're looking for.
And Yassine, correct me if I'm wrong, we created this Kaufman Hall RFP response skill just by uploading the PowerPoints we were given and trying to extract what maybe some of those guardrails would be, or
yeah, so I created this skill based on, and again, like Writer has, just for you guys' knowledge, like Writer has a skill creator. So it's not like Yassine sitting down and like writing out all this stuff. I described what I thought was the best way to do it. But essentially the things that I really took from the samples that you shared, Jen, was structure, right? So you could see here in this skill, what we have programmed in here is that this is kind of like the base structure that should always be there. And then these are some of the like the optional modules that based on the interaction with the end user may or may not be there. So it's kind of like giving the LLM a little bit more structure. Here we're, giving it information on the color palette and like the typography dimensions, like the voice and tone, all that sort of thing. And it's kind of like, some other like references and things like that. Like here it's referencing some of the templates and things like that. But anyways, the point is that this is kind of like how we're configuring what to use, what not to use, things like that.
Okay.
Does that kind of help shed a little bit light in terms of like how so it's very different. I guess it's fundamentally different from like, let's say like a Seismic, because I know you guys mentioned that before, where you have like a whole bunch of slides and you're dragging and dropping a bunch of them in here. The level of referencing of materials that you provide is configurable.
Yeah, this is a better use case for than Seismic, Jen, for your needs, I think, than like my take is Seismic is really an assembler. It's just assembling existing slides, and it's using some storyline build of AI that you can use called Aura. But this is taking your unique voice, your unique guidelines, the brand guide, all the stuff, and it's built out in the LLM with skills saying, okay, every time I create a proposal, create it this way, using the data from responsive. That's how I see it.
Yeah, and I think like for me, and I was telling Carlo this before this call as well, like for me, the main piece that I really want you to walk away with, Jen, is the power in these types of capabilities, right? Because I feel like you have all these things that you do day to day. And even though we may not have like spoken about very specific examples, in my mind, if you understand what the possibilities are in using this type of technology, like for example, skills and like how the ability for us to generate these types of PowerPoints and things like that, I feel the opportunities when you're actually in your day-to-day will kind of like compare in your mind. That makes sense.
So so let me make sure I'm tracking the functionality here. So the skills are kind of like the rules and the basic architecture, right? Like this is how the house is built, how it's structured. We've got these many rooms, whatever. And then you're using the interface here to really say, this is a really bad analogy, but like I have the plans from the designer. The designer says, okay, the designer being the RFP, we need to have this in a modern look and feel. But then, so you can import that. And then really after that, it's, okay, the user saying, now I need references. And so the references are grabbing the architecture, grabbing the RFP, the designer to say, okay, this is modern, and dropping in those references based on those two pieces, right? So it's
or creating, or creating, like
creating, right?
Yeah.
Because Steve, you're right. Right now, there's a lot of effort that we're putting in to architect what's in Seismic, but there isn't the ability within Seismic to say, okay, now add a slide that gives me a framework for approach, or add a slide that talks about academic medical centers, or I need these inputs, create a slide where a user has typed out some, a couple sentences on how they want the approach to be modified.
Yeah, Writer is more mature in terms of its AI and LLM.
Okay.
Seismic is not an AI company. They're trying to build AI into things. So I said it's a pretty good assembly tool for basic presentations. That's the lesson that I've kind of learned over the time. This is a better approach. And by the way, you're still going to be living, like we're going to need to learn how. I know how to do it, not maybe anywhere near as good as Yassine on this, but like build out markdown codes and skills. Like I could do some of it, but like if you want to advance it, that's the one gap here. Like all of a sudden you want something that's not there in the skill set. skill sets are meant to be continually honed, developed, and so forth by what goes on. So we got to address that gap if you do this route.
Yeah,
I
and
was
the nice
saying-
thing as well, Jen, is like it's very iteratable, right? Like to your point, like if you wanted to create that new slide at the bottom of the presentation, or in like somebody could come in net new and say, hey, put together this slide. Oh, maybe I don't like this way. It structured these things, use these different images, things like that. You could kind of like iterate on it. And then, sorry, I know the last point I really wanted to make, which I completely forgot, is the interconnectedness. So at the end here, I asked it to just push a summary of the items that the human needs to check into Teams, so that the user could verify that. And of course, because we have a Teams connector, things like that, it was able to go ahead and just push that summary directly into my channel. So I could, as the end user, I'll know when this presentation is finished. I know what I need to check, and then I kind of have that I have that information for when the activity is finished.
Jennifer, if one thing I thought, like, I don't presume that you necessarily assume going this direction, but let's just say you do. I think, and you guys that writer, tell me if I'm right or wrong here. I think you have to sit down and map out the initial requirements really carefully so that the skills can really be honed correctly right out of the gate. Then I think you need to have a roadmap too, because there's probably things that you want to do later on that are less urgent. Like, we should really give this if you go down this path, we should treat it with a roadmap as a capability, right? That's where I'm going with it. Which means you guys, if we ever get to a proposal stage, we need to map out the proposal that way.
So,
Yep.
Go ahead.
I like what you're saying, Steve, about the roadmap stuff, because even some of what Yassine was showing earlier, that conversation within Writer, we have capabilities coming where that actually can be pushed to Teams. So ideally, people are interacting with Writer where they already work, not necessarily having to come back and forth. You saw a glimpse of that at the final push, but we're bringing more of that capability into the conversation you saw too. So definitely want to validate what's feasible in the short term and what is a nice to have that's just around the corner.
Okay, so I have a couple questions, and this gets really into the weeds a little bit, but I think it helps the discussion around that roadmap, because I see this, Steve, as something that could be launched within Daniel Mojica's area for sales enablement, and not only specifically to RFPs. I think RFPs become a use case for this, not the owner of this. And
I am totally with you, and with it, which will make Carlo really happy, is more licenses. But I also need, as the MarTech lead, want to make sure it's on a roadmap. Licenses are clear, how it's being paid for. It has to go through all the security stuff, all the stuff, right? If we do it, but I think it's intriguing, Jen. It's intriguing the way it works.
Because what I'll say is, like, responsive, which is the tool we use, RFPIO, right, does not do PowerPoint well. Yes, there's a plugin. Yes, you can be in PowerPoint and access a slide deck that's in responsive, but there's no merge code, there's no automation. It's very much the basic. I have a slide deck and I'm grabbing from responsive another slide deck and adding it.
Yeah.
So I think the Kaufman Hall knowledge management team has done a great job of setting up responsive as the source of truth, because it's governed. They can manage it. You can assign owners. You can go through a review cycle, right? But I look at the consulting team, and they do the majority of their work in PowerPoint. They do RFPs. They do proposals that aren't RFPs that we have nothing to do with. They do oral presentations after RFPs. They do presentations. They do delivery when they're in the middle of an engagement. And that's where I feel like if we're going to use a tool like this, it's got to have applicability across all of those. Otherwise, we're on the RFP team fighting a battle to say, use this, but only for RFPs, right? Like, to me, this is a solution that says anytime they have a PowerPoint, regardless of the application of it, if they're if the skills are there, if the format and templates there, if you guys are, if writer is grabbing content from responsive as the source of truth, or however that gets set up to say, here's the base templates for physician engagement or strategy and business transformation, those, like, here's the pool, right? And writer's just pulling from that pool, but the pool is always cleaned and it's always up to date. That's where, like, yes, I could use it for RFPs, but the applicability is way more holistic than just my team. The other question I have, and this is like just a in the weeds question, is when we do RFPs, sometimes within the slide masters, like our confidential markings on the bottom have to be different based on if it's a public or a county entity where we have no freedom of information protection versus a private organization. So we're going to have different footers. It is a pain in the neck to have a final presentation, have half the slides say confidential, have half of them not. We have to go through and we have to remove it all. If you work in PowerPoint, you know the slide masters can be kind of irritating. Is that something that writer can solve for down to the level of like slide masters and marking things in a particular way at a, like, here's the entire slide deck, let's do it all?
Yeah, so let me play that back to you. So essentially, when you're creating this deck, based on the type of entity it is, the footer will change, and the footer needs to be
Okay.
changed for the entire deck.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
Yeah. So yeah, for sure. Like in the playbook itself, and this is just me kind of like spitballing here, just
Yeah.
based on the request, but in the playbook itself, you could essentially add in here, let me sorry.
And it's okay to kind of say, yes, it can do it, because I think these are some of the things we're solving for, which is as we move through this, people add things from other slide decks and it gets really messy. And then all of a sudden you missed one and you got to go find it in the slide master. But if that, and that's kind of one thing I thought that is, if that can be automated as the footer should be the same, or the header should be the same, no different than a merge code, that would be great. So
yeah, no, for sure. Like,
okay,
I would say like you'd include like a bit of like a drop down to say what the entity is, and then they'd have a lookup. But essentially the nice thing is that as part of the playbook, as the last step, you could do like a QA check, right?
Right.
You can put in like a QA check and specifically call out, hey, this is the footer. Make sure double check the type of entity it is. Make sure the footer lines up to the text that it needs to say. So it'll go back and do like another pass at the end of it to validate those types of like items.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I guess you could even, do it as a standalone, like, hey, this playbook only has one purpose. It's to check incorrect headers if, that's the way that that user is finding it.
Yeah, or you would probably just like include another skill here, like a footer checker skill, and then as the last step, say, hey, add in, do like your QA on footer checking, so that way, Jennifer, like when you let's just say you had a PowerPoint, like a rogue PowerPoint that somebody else made, you'd be able to kind of just like upload that PowerPoint in here and say something like use/footer checker skill to validate the footers that they're aligned with what we expect. And you know what I mean? Like, you don't need to spin up a new playbook. You could use that skill to do an ad hoc check also.
And Jennifer, what he's talking about is essentially what Maximon is doing, is building a skill to evaluate your end proposals for effectiveness. Like, we could have gone the other way and had writer do that too, but Maximon's done it. That's great for doing it. But what they're saying, you can create all sorts of interesting skills. That's the kind of requirements we need to sit down and map out if we go this route. Like, what types of things do you want to get on? And then you just call up the skills, like they said, when you need it.
Yeah, and I think, Steve, the other kind of mapping this out is the technical skill required to build these skills or to program this. Like, my team doesn't have that capability right
No,
now.
I know.
Not that one or two of them couldn't figure it out, but like they're not coders or
Right.
they just haven't lived in this world.
This is a good point for us to jump in, because one of the great things about writer skills is it doesn't require that skill set
Okay.
to do it. Like you saw the example one we had.
Yeah.
If on this call, the way that we would edit it, like if you had, let's say you had 10 points, Jen, where you're like, I'm not happy about these things, we would have just uploaded the file here, hit the microphone, let you talk, give
Okay.
those 10 points and say, give us a revised skill, run it, and
Okay.
we've got a V2 and we're off to the races.
Okay.
So I get all that to say, not that those technical people wouldn't take to it easier, but developing these skills is just all natural language
Right.
chatting,
Yeah.
and that we can
Okay.
enable on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the piece there that we will probably help with, and this is like a very practical consideration, right, is really helping think through or enable the problem solving type of ability to figure out how to put the solution together. Like
Right.
what should go in a skill versus like what should you build a playbook for?
Yeah.
Those pieces, based on what I've seen with other customers, like once we kind of have like 1 or 2 sessions with folks, non-technical folks, specifically in marketing especially, and they kind of get their head wrapped around like how to put things together, they like just shoot off in terms of like all these very, very cool use cases and applying it to their day-to-day jobs. But I think that's really the hurdle. It's not anymore about like being able to code and things like that. It's more being able to break down that problem and how do you like architect that solution to put it together.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like Lego blocks is the way I think about it. Like if you want to create the big Lego block house, you start usually with a platform, a base, right? Or you could actually start building individual Lego blocks, like a single skill, like every time I wanted to do this. And it's just
Right.
context, like, hey, I want to build this. Here's context for you. Do these steps. That's a skill.
Yeah.
Save it. Call it something. Build another Lego block skill. And then you just assemble it saying, I want to build a house with this skill, this skill, this skill. This. Every time I run it,